Okay, okay. Take your seats. Settle down, settle down. Welcome to the Road to Concord 101. This class is about all things connected to the path of history leading from Mount Sinai to Lexington Green and the individual liberty and freedom of man. If you're in the wrong place, feel free to get up and go see the registrar's office about dropping this class, preferably before you meet the professor. In the event you do not already know this, your professor is Joe Bakanovic, and he has a bit of a reputation on campus. He is most definitely an acquired taste, but if you can learn to tolerate him, he will make you better at defending your position, whatever it may be. I'm T.A. Charlie. I'm here to help the professor, but more importantly, you. We encourage you to take notes, and if you have questions, feel free to call. If you'd like the number, please email us. You can also post your questions in the comments, and we'll get the professor's attention. Part of my job is to let you know a little bit about your professor. As I said earlier, the professor has that bit of a reputation on campus. Not all of it is good. Let me help explain a little with a story about how I came to be the professor's TA. I was invited to attend one of his classes. My first impression of the professor was that he was an egotistical, narcissistic know-it-all. My intent after only a few minutes of class was never to attend another class with this professor. But after class, Professor Joe came up to me and thanked me for my class participation and told me that my perspective was valuable, and he asked me to keep coming to class. This actually took me back a little. To me, he seemed inconsistent. What was I to do? I decided to continue coming to his classes. As I did, I actually started doing what he does encourage students to do. Check behind him and see if what he is teaching is actually correct. I have done this over and over again, and generally speaking, I found what he teaches to be backed by sound, valid, and rational arguments from reputable sources. When I have challenged him and provided a sound, valid, and rational argument in opposition to his current position, he immediately changed his position and thanked me for correcting him. Why do I tell you all this? Professor Joe is a little rough around the edges, especially in the way he delivers his content. But if you stick with him and listen to what he teaches and then go and check his sources, you will likely find, as I did, he will help you better understand the world around you and help you to think better and hopefully to live better. At least that is our hope. One last note. This class builds on itself. Therefore, it is important to attend class regularly. We will not always have time to go over previously covered material. If you are new, we suggest you watch our older classes. We've created playlists to help you with those things we feel are of special importance. Now, let's get started.
Good morning. Welcome to the Road to Concord. This is Monday, December 8th, 2025. I am Joe Bakanovic, your host. Going to be a bit of a different show today from what I normally do. Well, not really. I was going to rant and rave about politics again, but gosh, so many people are already doing that. I know it's entertaining, and that what I tend to do here isn't all that entertaining for most people, but I'm actually trying to help. Now, my way of helping tends to be a little bit more toward the academic or scholarly or egghead side of things. And I understand, I can remember high school. Nobody wants to be around the nerds until you grew up. Then all of a sudden you found yourself working for a lot of those nerds and wondering how the heck you got to be in the, how things got flipped around on you. Well, it may not be that way for all of us, but I was doing show prep today, and I ran across something that pretty much, it's the reason for what I'd already decided to do today. It's a quote by Thomas Sowell, And it comes from a Facebook page called Philosophy Hub. And it just says the tragedy of humanity is choosing comfort over truth. Boy, ain't that the case. What we're going to be discussing today is in that wheelhouse, or at least what I'm going to discuss. It may not be the most entertaining show I ever do. That's okay. I seek to understand everything I can, down to the littlest thing. Why does the ant do things the way the ant does? Why does the wind blow the way it does? I'm one of these ones that I've always wanted to know why. So what I do here on this show is I share what I've learned in my life, or I try to. And I give you my understanding, and I ask for your pieces of the puzzle, your way of looking at things in return. Because I learn from each and every one of you. I wish, and hopefully in the new year, I'll figure out how to fix the phone situation so it's easier to call in. And maybe we'll just have to learn to deal with the idiots that think it's some reason fun to call in and disturb shows like ours. You had those clowns in high school as well. And they never grew up. They're still in mama's basement eating Cheetos. And that sounds derogatory, but the problem is that in a general sense, those type of people, that's where they're at. And they're the ones now screaming, give me the money from the rich because the rich stole my wealth from me. Well, they never got out of the basement and learned to do anything. They never understood. And for the most part, they didn't even learn. And that gets me to one of the notes I had put on for my pre-show is ultimately there's 3 different types of people in the world, at least as far as this show is concerned. There's those that don't know and don't care. Those are the ones that would call up and say, hey, there's a snake in your ear. And for those of you who are new to the show, you probably don't remember all the way back when we first started, we had a group of people who thought it was great fun to poke fun at us. And that's all they would do is they'd call up and tell me, hey, you got a snake in your ear because of the flag in the background. And they thought that was funny. I pity those people. That's it. That's the ultimate, that they have reached the pinnacle of their lives. That's all they'll be like, well, we got a bigger show than yours. I don't care. All you've told me is that you reached that there's more idiots in the world than there are those trying to make a way for themselves that's going to help them and be productive and actually make sense of their lives. So you have that group of people who don't know and don't care. Then you got a group of people who think they understand the world. They know everything, but they still don't care. They might be aware of what's going on, but they don't care about the what and the why. That's where I used to be that person. I used to know just a little bit about everything, but I didn't care about the what and the why or how it applied to my life. When I started caring about the what and the why, I realized that's going to lead to humility, which, well, I don't know if it's frozen. We got a note here asking if Rumble's frozen. I don't see it frozen on my end. Everything seems to be working, Natasha. The computers have been giving us trouble lately, folks. I haven't been able to figure out if it's my computer or the internet. And if Natasha's having trouble, it might be on my end. But as I was saying, if you learn to understand the world, it will lead to humility and then compassion. Compassion will lead to love for your fellow man. So where am I going to go with this? Knowing is not just being aware of something. It's not just watching the news. And it's not just listening to talk shows. For the most part, they'll tell you they're there to entertain you. And they might give you pieces here and there, and then you'll know that this is happening. But knowing doesn't provide context or understanding. And understanding is not the what, where, when, and who. That's just the knowing. That's the facts. That's just the facts, ma'am. No, understanding is the what and the why. Knowing is the Constitution. Understanding is the Declaration of Independence. It's not about knowing the thing or the event. It's about understanding the reason and the process. That's understanding. It's not being aware of what happened, but rather why it happened. And if you understand, as opposed to just know about it, there's a form of power there. Because just because you know something doesn't mean you know what to do with it. Those who understand have a better possibility, better chance of knowing what to do with the knowledge they have. I'm reading a note here. Knowing is just dots on a page. Just a bunch of dots on a page. Understanding is knowing how to connect those dots. Number one goes to number two goes to number three. That's an understanding of what you're supposed to do with the dots on the page. But it's more than just connecting the dots. It's why they should be connected in the first place. Knowing is that, it's a connect the dots. It's a picture. I've got to connect the numbered dots to see the picture. Well, if you were depending on what you're dealing with there, understanding, you may not even have to connect the dots. With a pencil or a pen, you might be able to see the picture anyway. We call it fireflies, the dots. So it's all a big thing that we have to struggle with in this world. And in school, go back to high school, I guess. For me, I was really good at knowing. I could memorize a lot of things. And I thought I was, that made me intelligent. Well, maybe, but it didn't make me wise. I knew the formula and I knew how to plug in the numbers and work the problem. And I could get the right answer. But you know what? I was getting the right answer without ever understanding what it was I was doing. I learned later in college, when I was in my physics class, that if I understood, I didn't have to remember the formula. I could derive it. I could just work out the formula myself if I forgot it. So if I understood, I was more powerful, because not only could I work out that formula, I could work it out others. And as the more I understood, the less I had to remember. So and let's say we're back in school again and you're not dealing with mathematics. Now we're going to deal with history. I was a little better here, but not that much better. It was memorize what happened and when and where and all that stuff. Regurgitate the answers for the test. But I wish I'd have been paying more attention. I liked history, mostly for the storytelling. But I wish I'd have been paying more attention earlier in my life, because understanding history, the why it happened, and the how, the process, that would have led to a more stable life for me in my early 8 years. It would have been, the world would have had a sense of more predictability for me, which would have created a little bit more of a sense of security. Not like I knew where I was going to sleep or where my next meal was going to come from, but like I understood what was going to happen next, or a little better. And that leads to a form of happiness. Now, I'm not talking about, giddy happiness. It's not what I'm after. It's not what I'm getting for. It's more like what Paul would call joy. Because if I understood why something was happening and the process by which it was happening, I'd be less likely to be surprised. I could even predict things to a degree. And that lets you make plans that you can actually count on. And when you can make plans, you're better able to survive things. And that will give you a sense of security, which leads to a sense of happiness, a little bit of a peace about you. It's one of the reasons that I'm not a prepper. I've learned to understand that the world is going to be volatile no matter what happens. Now, I prepare for it a little bit, but I've got enough to take care of my family for 6 months to a year without any outside help. But I'm not going to provide for, I'm not going to become Burt Gummer in the Tremors movie, where I've got everything for the next 10 years of the zombie apocalypse in my house, and every penny I've spent is on ammunition and food and water and, ham radios and everything. I'm not criticizing people who do that. I'm just telling you that I've learned to understand that if I know how to survive, in multiple different situations, then I provide for enough to get me from the life I'm living now to whatever the life is going to be like after whatever happens. That's why I had what I needed when the hurricane hit, Hurricane Michael. I mean, that was a big one that wiped out just about everything in my county. And we were without power for almost a month. But all we had to do was hop in the truck, run up the road to a different town. We bought a generator, came back. I got everything else I needed. I had some friends come in from out of town, brought us a bunch of gas, and I had the power cords I needed. I set the generator up to run the shop. So we had air conditioning. I moved a refrigerator out of the house into the shop. I adjusted. We moved the bedding into the shop, so we had air conditioning at night. I took the satellite TV down out of the house, set it up in the I knew what to do and how to do it. I understood what we were going to need to survive. And our boys came up to live with us out of town because it was more comfortable up where we were at, because we had the generator power and we had places to sleep at night that were comfortable and everything. And for the next 3 weeks, we basically camped out as a family. And we got closer than we'd been in a long time as a family. And it was because I knew how to transition. I had an understanding of what was going to be needed and how to make it happen. That gave me a sense of security. I didn't feel lost. I didn't feel, oh my God, what do we do now? Now, if all I'd have known is, yeah, if I have a generator, I have power. But how do I make the generator work? How do I get the power to the house? How do I do? I know what it is, but I didn't know how it worked. Then that's not going to give you any security, any peace of mind. So that's what I'm after in life, is trying to understand. And the more you understand, the better off you'll be, because you can know everything in the world. Just know it. But that doesn't provide that security. It does, and that can lead to fear. Okay, even though you know it, you don't know what to do with it or how to make it work. And understanding can help you, maybe not remove the fear, but control it. And understanding leads to wisdom. Wisdom leads to courage to face and to cope. Knowing is not, that's not control. And neither is understanding. Understanding doesn't equal control. Neither does knowing a bunch of things mean control. But knowing, the fear might lead you to want to control other people so that you feel less insecure, less at risk for the world. But understanding will lead you to not try to do that. Because understanding, like I said earlier, leads to humility. Humility tells you, well, I can't control these things. I can't control that person. And even if I could, I shouldn't. But just because I know something, I got no wisdom. My dog knows all sorts of things, knows where the toys are in the toy box, knows where I keep the food and the treats, knows where the doggy door is. Well, all three of our dogs knows where I'm at right now. All three of them do. They can come up here anytime they want. They know that. But there's no understanding in them. They don't understand where the food comes from or why they're fed what they're fed. They don't understand that my wife is feeding them a nutritious diet that, it's slightly cooked, so it's closer to what, a dog would have eaten in the wild before they were domesticated and everything, and it's better for their body. They don't understand any of that. So when the thunderstorm comes, they don't understand what that is, so they get scared. And sometimes when certain things around the house, they, like if my wife is using certain tools to clean the house, the steam cleaner or the vacuum or whatever, they'll try to attack it. They're scared. You can tell by the way they react. They don't understand. Well, that's the same thing with a human being. You might know it, but if you don't understand, it leads to fear. And fear leads to the dark side. And it does. Because what happens is you're scared, you don't understand, and you're not going to take the time to understand. So you seek to control. And that's what Darth Vader's crime was. He wanted to control death and control other people so that he could get what he wanted. Ultimately, it was because he was scared. If you do watch at least the first 6 shows, the first 3 and then the prequels, I'm not going to get into what, whether or not they were good or bad movies or anything like that, but the storyline. Anakin as a child was scared and never learned to handle his fear. He never understood. And that's what I don't want to be. I want to understand, and I seek the wisdom. And that, as you go in life, will help you learn what to expect and how to respond to things that happen around you. There's stability in that. Knowing doesn't provide stability. Understanding does. It leads to a stable, consistent, and coherent worldview. And from that comes peace of mind. Not necessarily security for your body or anything like that, but peace of mind, which leads to tranquility in a sense, or can. But understanding requires thought and research, which will lead to more thought. And it's hard work. I know. But the thing is, knowing is a lifelong process. You always have to be going. If you seek to understand, there comes a point where you really don't need to know anything else. I mean, it's nice to, but you don't need to anymore. You've done the hard work. You don't need to know everything because you understand that what's happening tomorrow in the news is just another flavor of ice cream that's been around since the beginning of time. Oh, okay. It's like Zorg's character in The Fifth Element, if you've seen that. He gets onto the spaceship and everybody's panicking because the bomb alarm went off, and he goes, "Oh, I know the sound of this music." He's been there before. He didn't even need to know exactly what was going on. He just arrived into the big space luxury liner, like a space going cruise ship. He pulls in his little space car, hot rod, and everything's going crazy because of the bomb alarm. And he didn't even need anybody to tell him what was going on. He's like, "Oh, I know the sound of this music." That comes from wisdom, understanding. Somebody who didn't understand would have come in there, "Oh, God, chaos, I'm scared. What's going on?" He wasn't scared. He just got to be about doing his business. That's what I'm looking for, is to be able to be that secure with my world, to help others do the same. And once you've done the hard work of trying to understand something, understand the progressive movement, let's say. Well, that's going to require you to go back to Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson. And we've read them on this show and we've studied them. And now that we know what they wanted and why they wanted it, you realize that they're no different than the communists or any other socialist movement or fascist movement. They want to shape the world closer to their heart's content. Oh, wow, the Fabian socialist window. Yes. So now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's lack of knowing. But if you understand that it's all down to man's desire to be God, or be a God, little g God, and control everything, so that they don't have to fear, they don't have to want, they don't have to thirst or hunger, and everything works the way they want it to work. Well, you don't need to know all of these little details. You understand, oh, okay, well, that's just another flavor of that ice cream. Man trying to be, the serpent in the garden, trying to join him. From that little bit of security. Somebody say, "Well, you don't know me." Well, yes, actually, I do, because I've come to understand that when I run into these personality traits or these type of behaviors, it almost always means that this is the type of person you are. I see that in you, so I know what type of person you are. The Bible tells me that you know them by their fruit. Well, that's just another way of saying you'll know who or what they are by the way they act. This helps you if you put in the hard work. You don't need to constantly be on the news all the time. It gives you more time to do other things. But you do have to make choices. You have to choose whether or not you're going to keep studying. When you have to choose what you're going to study, you're going to choose when you study, or if you even want to. I don't know if we froze up or not. It looks like I have on my end. If you do the hard work, it'll become predictive. And you'll be prepared in ways that other people aren't. And when something happens and they lose their heads around you, you won't. and you can become a stable, more dependable person in their world, and they'll look to you for leadership. At least you'll be emotionally prepared and stable. Now, there is a downside to this. Wanting to know, wanting to understand the wisdom, it requires curiosity, a desire, an effort, dedication, perseverance. It builds a higher order of consciousness. But it's going to require, if you do that without a metaphysical grounding, spiritual grounding, it can lead to very negative feelings of despair and apathy, or narcissism, because you can think your way into thinking you're a god. Oh, I understand how to do all these things. Look, I understand the laws of physics. Well, technically, no, you don't. Oh, yes, I do. I'm a god now. I'm going to collide these two subatomic particles together just to see what happens. Somebody comes along and says, hey, you're going to create a black hole, swallow up the earth. Oh, nonsense. That'll never happen. Why? Because I don't want it to. So you go ahead and do the experiment anyhow. And for all we know, we've destroyed the earth somewhere along the line, and we're all just caught on the wall of a black hole somewhere. Who knows? That's the science fiction version of all this stuff. Understanding tells me, no, that's not what's happened. Knowledge says it could. Understanding tells me it isn't. So I don't worry about those things. There's that peace of mind there. But the more you understand, it can lead to a feeling of despair or helplessness. I understand, not in all of the specific detail, but in general terms, I understand why we are where we are. I know how we got here. I understand how we got here. I understand the process and the reasons. That's also why I understand we're not going to change it. People keep asking me, what do we do, Joe? And I keep telling you, I don't know, because I don't think you can change it. In order to fix this, we have to change human nature. Well, that has to be done one person at a, well, not human nature, but the human will. And we can't change human nature, which means we can't change the human will. Only the individual can do that. So if you want to save this country, you're going to have to save the will of everybody in it. In the progressive or the socialist or the Marxist, they say, well, then I'll do that. I'll force people to do what I know they have to do, to think the way I know they have to think. Well, you don't understand. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing that. That's the problem. Knowers generally are reacting out of fear or some sort of lust for money, lust for fame, power, sex, whatever. And most of the time, that lust is born out of an insecurity or a fear. They're trying to control things so that they won't be scared. But those who understand just let it go a little better, not necessarily perfectly. I'm not saying that. But I understand I can't change the world. All I can do is change me and share my understanding with those who wish to listen. Encourage them to do the same in their own lives, in their own way. I've come to understand that you are not me and I am not you. What works for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. But I can encourage you. These are the general principles that I've learned. They've worked for me. Take the principle and figure out how to make it work for you. Now, principles are universal. Their application needs to be tailored to each individual person. So I can encourage and hope that you change and that I can grow a small part of the forest myself by changing one person at a time, planting one tree at a time. And it takes time, and it requires wisdom, understanding, rather than just knowledge. And that leads to compassion, patience, and willingness to accept the outcome. Even if it's something I don't understand. I may not understand how the outcome is working. I may not think that the outcome is as desirable as it didn't turn out the way I would have had it turn out, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. It doesn't mean it's not the outcome it's supposed to be. It just means it wasn't what I was expecting. So I look at, I try to help somebody and they learn one way or the other and not what I'm thinking they should do. But if they come out better than they were before, in my understanding, leave it alone. encourage them to keep going, because that helps them, that person. And if that's what I'm truly trying to do, is help others understand and make a better life for themselves, it's not for me to define what a better life is. It's not for me to define when enough is enough or when they need to keep going. It's for them. I've got enough to do worried about myself. And that's what I've learned as I've walked through life here. I was always book smart. That was just knowing. I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't understand what its purpose of knowledge was for, or how to apply it. I didn't know the reasons or the process. I didn't learn that until I was a lot older in life. And as a consequence, I wasted most of my life. But I woke up somewhere along the way. And I'm just going to presume that most of the people who watch this show have woken up or are waking up themselves. And I pray it's not so much me, because I'm nobody to follow, but what I'm learning and what I'm sharing with you, and the encouragement to take it and make it your own. I don't know how to do that for you, and I don't want to, not anymore. There was a time, but it's not for me to do. It's not for me to even want to do. And we shouldn't do that for anybody else either. Now, we're going to take the bottom of the hour break. When we come back, I'm going to talk about something our founding fathers warned us about. And it's how we got here. It's one of the reasons we're here, where we're at. I'm going to hit on that for you. We'll round the show out. We'll finish it up. May not go the full hour, but we'll get close. What follows is the how to do this better for yourself side of this discussion, what I've learned. So if you're looking for practical application, hopefully you'll join us after the break. We got 3 minutes and we'll be back. Natasha, please. All right, we're back. Excuse me. All right, let's just start here. Hopefully, if we're lucky, when we were being raised, in this, there's no guarantee. There are exceptions to everything. Okay, let's just point that out now. That's wisdom. But hopefully, you had parents that loved you enough to raise you with some sense of right and wrong, what you ought and ought not do, and a family that amplified that, and then a community, maybe a church, schools. If nothing else, you had your own friends, and hopefully some of them had learned that, and that you weren't raised in just a gang, because that's law of the jungle there. So let's just assume that you were raised in a not perfect world. None of us are, but a civilized society or family or area somewhere. I'm not dealing with those unfortunate ones who were born into chaos to begin with. Okay. I feel for them, and I won't excuse them from what I'm about to address. I'm just going to tell you that I've learned that it's going to be a lot harder for those poor folks because of something our founding fathers tried to warn us about. And they learned it from the Greek philosophers as well as from scripture. Once virtue is lost, virtue, your morality and your self-discipline, hand in hand. Once that's lost, it's almost impossible to regain. Now, I have quoted, I think it's the Apostle Peter, many times where he talks about people will become depraved to the point of becoming nothing more than animals. And at that point, they're good for nothing but to be led to the slaughter. And what he's saying is that barring the miraculous movement of the Holy Spirit, of God's hand in your life, once you've reached this point of being virtueless, you're an animal. You don't know and you don't care. Hopefully, you were raised to at least want to know some things about what's going on around you and a little bit about what's considered right and wrong, at least in society, even if it's just to keep yourself out of jail and out of trouble. Okay. But if you slip into that animal side, that animalistic side, that depraved side, it blocks virtue. It even blocks the desire to be virtuous and to be righteous. And for better or worse, and I'm going to state a hard truth, there are human beings who are nothing more than animals. And they should be treated as such to an extent. And you say, well, Joe, this is supposed to be a Christian-based, Christian worldview, Judeo-Christian worldview show. Why are you saying that? Well, we're still supposed to treat all of, God, Yahweh's creations with respect as good stewards, right? Now, the other animals are not made in God's image. No, I understand that. But I no longer believe that God's image is quite exactly what I was taught in Sunday school. I believe Dr. Heiser is correct. It's more imager, because the scriptures tell me that some people can become children of the devil. Now, let's just get the Bible out of this for a moment then, if that's going to make it easier to listen to. I'm going to return to it. So don't think that I'm trying to lighten things here. We're going to get back to the scriptures in a few minutes, but let's just say you're Ayn Rand. Well, my virtue is going to lie solely in my command of reason. Well, I am human. I am flawed. I am not perfect. So I am prone to making mistakes in my reasoning, which means I'm prone to making mistakes in what I think is right and wrong and how I apply those principles in my life. I'll compromise because I'm human. How do I know? How do I know when I've made a mistake? Well, okay, I understand logic. I can look for fallacies. I've seen people who understood logic commit fallacies. This is one of the reasons I don't like Ben Shapiro. He not only commits them, he sticks to them. Rush Limbaugh used to do it too. I try hard to avoid that. And I put people in my life to watch and make sure that I haven't allowed my blinders, my biases to let me reason around my fallacious reasoning. So where am I going with this? It is entirely possible to be a rational thinker and still slip into that depraved animalistic side. It can and does happen. I happen to believe that most of those following Islam, as Muhammad preached and lived it, are depraved. They're animals. Yes, I know what I just said. I believe it because they believe it is their duty to kill anybody and everybody who refuses to accept Islam and become a Muslim. And they believe that the world is theirs. Say, well, Joe, Christians believe that. No, they don't. Christians are not taught to go kill people because they don't convert. Christians are taught to leave the tares with the wheat and let God sort that out, Yahweh. Christians are told that the world belongs to God. The planet belongs to Yahweh, its creator, not us. We will be allowed to share in his inheritance in the future. We'll be allowed to participate in it, but it's his. Opposite of what Islam teaches. So where am I going with this? Muslims are not irrational. They use logic, and from their perspective, it makes perfect sense. But they're animalistic. In my understanding, there's no, to the extent that they've had a civilized society, it was the people living within Islam trying to avoid what Islam taught. That's how you ended up with the quote unquote softer side of Islam. Those were decent people trying to actually live a life of wisdom, of understanding, without being murdered by those following Muhammad. Now, I could know the history of Islam and the things it teaches, but that wouldn't give me right to say they're animalistic. Why do I say it? Because I actually understand it. It's like, just because I know Marx, just knowing it, I've read Marx, that doesn't give me what I need to say that I'm not going to ever be a Marxian. Why? Because just knowing it doesn't give you any wisdom. I know what he said. That doesn't give me anything by which I can filter what's right and what's wrong. I can't judge the morality, the virtue of Marx's teachings or of Islam's teachings. Not unless I understand. So I'm not a Muslim because I understand Islam. I'm not a Marxist because I understood Marx. And that's what I'm talking about, the difference between knowing and understanding. It'll help you in the long run. So let's say that you've gotten a position kind of like where I'm at in life, and you've lived a comfortable, soft life for too long, or a life of indifference where you just weren't paying attention, and you've lost your virtue, your discipline, and or your morality. What do you do? What if you do? This is me. To an extent, this is me. You have to find a compass. That's the first thing you have to do. You've got to find yourself a compass. And not just any compass. You got to find a reliable compass. And before you pick it up and start using it, test it. Test it. See how it's helped others. Do some research. For me, the compass is the Bible in its original terms. That's the compass I chose to use. I told you we'd be coming back to this. This is a Judeo-Christian worldview-based show for this reason. Why am I a follower of the way? Because I've read and studied the Bible and I understand it better than most. I didn't say perfectly, now did I? I said better than most in its original context. So that's my compass. Now, what do I have to do? Since it's a moral compass, I need to learn its do's and don'ts. How do I stay the course using this compass? Well, the Bible tells you to read it, study it, meditate on it, and test everything that happens in your world against it. It becomes the true north. Well, I got to learn how to stay on that course, how to recognize when I've strayed from my course, and how to get back on course. That requires understanding of how to navigate. You need to understand more than just the rules. Say, well, I understand the 10 Commandments. Joe, do you? Do you realize that the Messiah himself said that there's a weight to those commandments? Some things are more important than the others. I was always taught in school that sin is sin. Telling a little white lie is just as bad as murdering 6 million people. They're all sin. Well, to the extent that that's going to get you condemned to hell, yes, that is true. But if working on the Sabbath, in this case, healing somebody, comes up against that prerogative, I've got somebody who's mortally wounded. What do? Let him die? I've got a higher commandment to preserve life. Joe, that preserve life is not in the 10 commandments. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Are you going to lay down and let yourself die on the Sabbath? Well, you better not, because you were told that you are an imager of God. You're there to do his work, and you cannot be a good servant of the Father if you're going to let yourself die just because you won't take the slightest things, slightest measures to heal yourself. So if you're like the Messiah was, you're confronted with healing somebody on the Sabbath. What do? Well, the Messiah said, is it unlawful to do good on the Sabbath? Remember, you're commanded to get that donkey out of the ditch, even if it's on the Sabbath, because that was necessary to the preservation of life, both the donkeys and the owner. So you see, just knowing the 10 commandments is not as good as understanding them and how to apply them. So I can memorize them, and I will not know how to properly apply them. I have to learn how to navigate using my compass. And then I have to learn the discipline to let my compass be my guide. It's my guardrails. It makes my choices for me. I just have to learn to do them. Now, that's the hard part until you master them. Well, how do I do that? Okay. I went to Benjamin Franklin for this, and I'm struggling with this right now in my own life, but Ben Franklin was the one that's going to help me with this. Ben Franklin had this process in his life about making good habits, and he would work on one at a time, one thing at a time. And he'd work on it every day for 30 days. And by then it would become a habit, and he'd focus on that one thing, hyper focus. So I'm going to look at one thing at a time. Let's say one sin that I struggle with, one day at a time, one occurrence at a time. It might happen several times. There's a temptation to overeat for me. Every time I go by the pantry, I have to remind myself, no, you're not hungry, or you don't need to eat, or whatever. 30 days. Well, I've had to work on that one more than 30 days. I'm still working on it. But don't give up. That's the key. Don't get up. Don't give up. If you stumble, forget it. Don't look backwards. Not on the failure, because that'll cause you to be discouraged. You got to look forward in this. Get back up. Forget be a good goalkeeper or a good quarterback. You got to forget the interception or forget the last goal that was scored against you. You got to get back up, keep your confidence, face the next attack. Get up, stay focused. Next time, defeat it. Next day, defeat it. Discipline yourself. Next week, next month, until it becomes a habit. Once it's a habit, you've mastered it. It's much the same as a reverse process of defeating an addiction, because in a lot of ways, it's very similar. Okay, so I have this desire to eat. Well, you have to eat or you die. So it's not exactly an addiction, it's an abuse. So I have to master it. Whereas if it was alcohol, that's a thing that you have to be done with. You got to get rid of it. Get it out of your life. You can never be tempted with that again. You don't, once you got yourself sober and you've been sober for a while, you should learn that if one more taste, I can have one beer, that's going to lead to another, to another, to another. So that's how you deal with addiction. But let's say you suffer from pornography or lust of the flesh, and you're married. Well, the scripture says not to withhold your body from your spouse. So how the heck do you treat that lust as an addiction? It's not going to work. So this is why understanding is required, so that you know how to deal with these things. One of them has to be controlled and mastered. The right time and the right place for the right reasons and the right purpose. The other one has to just be banned from your life. So you have to beware. And you also have to make sure you don't become the compass. Back to Ayn Rand. If you become the compass, you're Johnny Depp in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Jack Sparrow's character. He had that compass that always pointed to what he desired most. And as a result, he lived a rudderless, drifting life. He didn't really live a life of purpose. Why? He never got anywhere. Why? He had a compass that told him what he wanted most. Yeah, he knew what he wanted, but he didn't understand why he wanted it or how to get it. That left him running in circles all the time. He didn't even understand himself. He just knew what he wanted because the compass told him. So if you choose your compass wisely, in my case, the scriptures, my compass comes with help. Power of the Holy Spirit. The scripture's there to teach me. This is what you can and can't do, Joe. This is why you should and shouldn't do these things, Joe. This is how you know when you're off course and how to get back on course, Joe. Okay. What compass are you going to choose? And if it's going to leave you just to yourself and your own devices, you're going to be in trouble, because the fact that you need a compass tells you that you can't be trusted by yourself. So at the very least, if you're not going to go with something like the scriptures, you're going to have to go with something that has accountability partners. Now, understand, I'm not teaching Gnosticism here. I'm not teaching the secret knowledges that are going to save you. Yeah, that's garbage. That's knowledge without understanding. And I'm not teaching self-help, not the way most people understand it. You can't perfect yourself. It's not what I'm teaching. I'm just trying to help you understand that self-discipline with a purpose and a goal, it's going to require work and understanding, not just knowledge. You have to understand, where is it I want to go? How's the best way to get there? Why do I want to go? Where I want to go is knowledge. Why I want to go there is wisdom. Where I want to go is knowledge. How I get there is understanding and wisdom. One of these things, knowledge, it's useless without understanding. It really is. I didn't understand that for the longest time. I started listening to talk radio back in the 80s, mid to late 80s. Lots of information. Lots of information. No understanding. I didn't know how one thing led to another or why. I didn't understand the processes. I got better at it in time. Then I found that compass that I use, the scriptures. I got a lot better at it. But that, I didn't stay with what the scriptures told me to do, and I lost my way. It led to apathy. It's not caring. I got to get my way back. When you become apathetic, that's hard to do. It's a form of tired that no amount of sleep will cure. And you don't have joy in anything. Food, friendship, the beauty of the wilderness around you, Mother Nature, the joy of watching a child play, or for me, having the dogs run around and play at my feet. There was a point where none of that meant anything to me. And then I got a hold of my compass again, dusted it off, started reading it again. And slowly, and I'm still just now grabbing a hold of the tiller on this boat of mine and grabbing it and trying to wrest it back on the right direction. But as you do, and you start understanding why I got off course and why I want to get back on course, certain things start to come back to life again. The color comes back. The joy comes back. The appreciation comes back. Just in a deeper, richer, more meaningful way. Because having once lost what you wanted and then found your way back, well, that's the prodigal son. Oh my gosh, is there a joy there? His brother was bitter. He was joyful to be brought back and allowed back in the house. He knew what he had lost and what he wanted back. I'm not all the way there yet. I hope I get there. I hope I have time left in my life to get there. But what about you? I got apathetic because I got to the point where I thought that nobody cares. There's nothing I can do to help. Nobody listens. So why try? It's all just meaningless, chasing after the wind. I was living with Solomon. Until I realized that that wasn't true. I was lying to myself. There were people who listened. And if I paid attention, there were people who took what I was trying to share with them and they applied it to their lives in the best way they could to their life, not mine. And I realized it was my narcissism. I still thought everybody had to do it my way. That was one of the first things I had to kill. I don't care what you make of what I tell you and share with you and try to teach you. As long as you grab hold of it and do something with it that helps you in your life, in your circumstances, in your situation, helps you personally, and then your family and the people in and around you in your circle. And I don't care how it helps you. I hope that you'll use the same compass I do and come to embrace it the way I have, the scriptures, the Bible, and its author, Yahweh, and his son, the Messiah. But if you choose to use it some other way for some other purpose, as long as you're not using it to try and control or harm or trample down somebody else, it's not for me to say anymore. I know what's best for me. I don't know what's best for you. That's for you to decide. All I can do is pray that you choose well. But it's humbled me. And in the process, it's taught me to get out of my own way when I talk to you and let him speak through me. It's made me a better servant. And I see the fruit because I've quit looking at what I wanted and started to look at what the compass told me to look for and to want. And it's requiring me to change the things I want. I have the power to do that. I have understanding now that I didn't used to have. Well, I don't feel that way. Guess what? You can make yourself feel that way. I just want to be happy. Then be happy. It's not that easy, Joe. Yeah, I used to think that too. Stop making excuses. I'm not saying it's easy for everybody, but you can choose happiness. Maybe not the happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, but the joy. The joy of knowing you're living a righteous life, doing what's right, even if everybody around you is doing wrong. And you better grab hold of that soon, because the darkness is here and it's growing. And you're either going to join it, be smothered by it, or you're going to learn to understand why you have to let the light shine through you, the way you live, the way you see things in this world, and accept the consequences. It might be loss of family members, loss of friendship, loss of job, loss of freedom, put in jail. There are brothers and sisters going to jail right now and being executed for speaking truth, capital T truth, standing up for the word, the scriptures, Yahweh, the Son, the Messiah. Well, even if you don't want to embrace the Bible, you might end up, okay, let's say that you decide that there's just two sexes, male and female. You could end up in jail for that now in certain parts of the world, and it's coming here in the United States. You're not even a religious person, but you know the truth that you're just male and female, and you refuse to bow to a lie. Are you prepared to stand up to the pressure that tells you, how many lights do you see? There are only 4 lights. Wrong, 5. No, there are 4. 5. Here, let me torture you some more until you say 5. Are you going to stick to what you know is true? Are you going to let the world break you? You have to decide that. I know I'll never stand up to the torture, but I know also I'm not going to say 5. I'm going to make them kill me. That can be done. I won't kill myself. They'll kill me just to shut me up. Okay. But I'll be preaching capital T truth until that moment, sharing it to whoever will listen, whoever finds value in it, in hope that that seed will yield more fruit than I ever will. In the belief that if I just teach that capital T truth, that's exactly what will happen, because he promised it will, and because it's got nothing to do with me and everything to do with him, simply because I was an obedient servant. And until I learned that understanding was more important than just knowing, I would have never come to that understanding. And I would still be trying to be him rather than his servant. And that's all I have for now. I'm going to sign us off now. Tell you that we here at the show love each and every one of you. This is a labor of love. That we hope, it is our earnest prayer, that we're benefiting you and your life and your family in some way. And that you find value in it that you can apply to yourself and your world and your life in a way that strengthens you and lifts you up, makes you a stronger person, happier person, less fearful. And it is our fervent prayer that it also brings you closer to the Creator, to Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to his Son, Yeshua Messiah. If there's anything we can do, help you with, please email us. It's joe@theroadtoconcord.com. If you haven't already done so, please follow the show at the Rumble, or follow our blog page at theroadtoconcord.com, or sign up to keep up with us. Hit the like buttons, the thumbs up. If there's a bell, if you're on YouTube, smack the bell. Help the show as best you can. Share it with whoever. If you do, just introduce them to me as best you can. Prepare them. I know I'm an acquired taste. Ask them to give the show more than just a few minutes. It builds on itself. And it is an acquired taste. I know this. I have no idea what we're doing tomorrow. Until I sat down this morning, I was intending to do an entirely different show today. I just trust that he'll give me something to talk to you about that's worth your time and effort. So until we see each other again, y'all stay safe and take care. Bye-bye.